Elizabeth Beck, and this is my informative speech on mediums of art. So what is a medium? A medium is a material an artist chooses to use while creating an art piece. There are varying types of mediums, and you don't have to be an expert to know how to use them. Today I'm going to be talking about 6 different mediums. I'm going to be talking about graphite, watercolor, oil, acrylic, clay, and color pencil. Graphite is one of my personal favorites. I like it because I've been using pencils for my entire life in school, and so you can go into a lot of depth with the graphite, like right here, with shading and different ways and tools to use it. There's a scale of the thickness of graphite right here. It goes from 4H to 6B, 6B being the darkest and 4H being the lightest, and it's based on the levels of graphite inside the pencil. There are different ways to shade in graphite. You can use a shading tool, which is basically rolled up paper to help you shade and keep things smoother on surfaces. And you can use a kneaded eraser or a regular eraser when erasing on your paper. A kneaded eraser is a lot easier to use because it's kind of the texture of clay, and it pulls out the graphite from the paper, so it is easier to use, and you can manipulate it to make it however shape you want. When you're done with your drawing, you want to use this workable fixative to spray down your surface and have it smooth and it doesn't smudge, so it's kind of like it's finished. Watercolor is the next medium, and it is a water-based paint, and it's used on thick textured paper, so it has the water and it can hold the water until it dries. There are 2 approaches when using watercolor. You can do wet on dry or wet on wet. Wet on dry is whenever you have thick wet paint on your paintbrush and you paint on dry paper, and it kind of has this effect right here where it kind of is like a border around the paint. And you can do wet on wet, which is wet paint on wet surface on a wet piece of paper, and it has this foggy look to it, and it's also used as well. Acrylic painting is one of my favorite because it is water-based, so you use water to manipulate the paint to keep it thick or thin. It's used on canvases or other substrates like wood or glass. And acrylic paint is really common because it's used for everyday paint, if you want to fix something, if you want to paint with your kids, and it comes out of clothes easier because it's water-based, so that's why a lot of people use it more than oil. This is a famous Bob Ross painting which he used with acrylic, and you can buy it. It's very common from stores and as such as Walmart. Oil painting is the next medium, and I really like oil painting, and it cannot come in contact with water because it's oil-based. So you use different linseed oil, paint thinner, pine oil, or turpentine to help thin out the paint because oil paint is actually quite thick. So whenever you're manipulating the paint, you use these different materials because it kind of gives it more of a thin and smooth look. And a lot of famous artists have used oil, like Leonardo da Vinci in his Mona Lisa painting, or Van Gogh in his Starry Night painting. It's very common on very popular pieces because it's thicker and it kind of gives it a smooth look, so it can look more realistic than acrylic. Clay is the next medium I'm going to talk about. So clay is often misconceived as something for pots and other types of things, but it can go into a lot of depth when making sculptures like so. And whenever your fingers can't do the details that you want, you can use these tools right here. They're very small and they can go into a lot of depth, like right here in the wings of this little angel. You can go into a lot of depth when manipulating your clay. Clay dries faster, so whenever you're using clay, if you want to have a more realistic piece, you're going to want to use mineral clay because it dries less fast and other than water-based because water evaporates out of the air faster. So there are different types of kilns. Kilns are basically ovens for clay. There are gas-based and electric-based, and electric is used for like smaller pieces and gas is used for bigger pieces. And whenever you're firing your clay, you fire it before you glaze it, and then you take it out and you put paint, which is called glaze, on it, and is a specific paint for clay. And you put it on the clay and then you fire it again. And you take it out after firing it, and it gives it this shiny look, and it kind of is smooth and it's finished, and it looks really sleek and good. And it can be used for any everyday use. The last is colored pencil. Colored pencil is often misconceived as well because a lot of people think it's just for little kids or it's harder to use, it's not as easy as graphite, but it can be used as detailed pictures like this picture of the donut. It is harder to erase because it is wax-based, because the pigment wax goes onto the paper and it sticks to the paper. You can't erase it as well because of the bright colors. So whenever you're drawing with colored pencil, you need to be sure not to mess up as much, or if you do, you need to have a plan of fixing it, because the erasers can't do the job like they can for graphite. Even if you use a kneaded eraser, it pulls out the pigments, but not this shadow right here. It just kind of leaves a residue. Whenever you're shading with colored pencils, it is a little bit harder, but you can use this tool right here. It is basically a clear colored pencil. It's thick wax, and it can go on any surface of colored pencil and give it a smoother look. Like you can see here, it's very smooth and sleek, and it looks real. So how it works is you use 2 colors, or 3 or 4, however many you want, and you can put it side by side and color in with this wax right here, and it gives it a smooth ombre look, and it like fades together. Very good. So some more examples I have are personal items that I've done, and with these specific mediums. So this is graphite, and it's a very large picture, and you can see that it's lighter up here and darker down here. I used a very thick 6B down here, and I went over it a lot. Some people prefer not to use graphite because it's lighter and it can't have as much shading as you would like. But you can shade, obviously I have here, but it does take a little bit more time and practice with it. This right here is clay, and you can see I glazed up here at the top, and down here I did not glaze. I used a mineral base, so that's why it has some speckles in it, and it's a little bit harder on the bottom. I did this whenever I was younger, so it's not my favorite piece, but I still like it. This here is an acrylic paint, or painting on wood. And you can see I put Sharpie over the top to give it more detail, but you can use black paint if you would like, and you can use smaller brushes to give it more of a detailed look. This here is an oil painting I did on wood, and I did 2 different techniques in oil paint because oil paint is thick, so you can use a less linseed oil with it and give it kind of a textured feel, and it kind of pops out of the canvas. And I used a brush down here, up here, and it gives it a more smooth look and more realistic look. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good day.